Well, here I am, going to start the live video. I said it's TomPadulaTV, and yep, we will start at 7:30 exactly. In the meantime, I'll give you some music. Let's see what I've got here. Until we then wait for 7:30. Tell me whether you're hearing the music. Robbie John is watching. Hi, Robbie. That's good. I've got two people. Angela is there. Can you hear the music? A comment. Yes, I can hear. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Tony Angelino, thank you. I will start at 7:30 exactly. Well, welcome to TomPadulaTV on Facebook. This is going to be a live show every Sunday from 7:30 till 8:30. 1 hour exactly, but I will start at 7:25 if you want to come on. This is a trial program. It's the first program, and I hope everything goes okay. But you know, I need to have people telling me that they can actually hear what I say, and that they, well, they can talk to me even later by calling on me, 0403 279 484, or by email, TomPadulaTV@gmail.com. The first item on my agenda tonight is to actually have talk about Dante Alighieri, the father of the Italian language. He was born in 1265 and died in 1321 on the 14th of September. Therefore, what's happening here is that we are commemorating Dante Alighieri, and we know that Dante wrote the Divine Comedy, like he called it La Commedia, that's it. But it became divine after about 100 years. I think Boccaccio was the one who did say that this was such a special work that it should be called La Divina Commedia. And I'm going to read here the first canto. There are 100 cantos in Dante Alighieri's Commedia, and they're divided into 3 parts: Inferno, Purgatorio, and Paradiso, and 33 cantos of each. But the first one is actually an introduction to Dante Alighieri. And let me read you the first canto. The first canto starts with: nel mezzo del cammin di nostra vita mi ritrovai per una selva oscura che la diritta via era smarrita. Ai, quanta dir qual era e cosa dura esta selva selvaggia e aspra e forte che nel pensier rinnova la paura. Tante amara che poco è più morte, ma per trattar del ben che vi trovai dirò delle altre cose che vo scorte. Io non so ben ridir come io vi entrai, tant'ero pien di sonno a quel punto che la verace via abbandonai. Now, these are the first 12 lines, and basically what Dante is doing is introducing the work, and he's saying, well, I was almost fell asleep, and I was in the middle of my earthly life, and at the time, people, you know, life, if you lived well, he lived to 70 years old. So he was about 35 when he began to write La Commedia. You know, it's a really big job, and it's such a wonderful work that after 700 years, people are still talking about it and studying it, because it is a work based on the religion of the time. Now, what it is with Dante Alighieri is that we're talking about his involvement with, at the time, with the Christian religion. So therefore, he was expounding in this particular canto why he decided, or he was called upon to write the poem. It was almost like divine inspiration, so it's true. Now, per quelli che mi ascoltano in Italia, che ho visto, ciao Valeria, io parlo in inglese perché qui a Melbourne si intende, parliamo in inglese continuamente. Io sono insegnante di lingue, qui sono stato, però il problema grande è che la gente qui non parla l'italiano come in Italia, è una seconda lingua l'italiano, e quindi c'è molto da imparare. Quindi presentare a Dante Alighieri è una cosa molto difficile, però ci sono anche delle traduzioni di questo lavoro. Continuo. Ma poi chi fui al piede un colle giunto, là dove terminava quella valle, che m'avea di paura il cor compunto, guardai in alto e vidi le sue spalle vestite già dei raggi del pianeta che mena diritto altrui per ogni calle. Allor fu la paura un poco queta che nel lago del cor m'era durata, la notte che passai con tanta pietà, e come quei che con lena affannata, uscito fuor del pelo alla riva, si volge l'acqua perigliosa e guata, così l'animo mio, che ancor fuggiva, si volse al retro a rimirarlo passo, che non lasciò già mai persona viva. Quindi Dante si trova caduto nel sonno, si trova in un posto oscuro, in una selva selvaggia, ma questo è anche nel senso della vita nostra che noi in realtà viviamo tutti i giorni. Io dico sempre che la gioventù è il nostro inferno, poi c'è la mezza età che è un po' di purgatorio e il paradiso viene alla fine e io mi trovo proprio là, in paradiso al momento. Quindi sto vivendo dei giorni che anche che ci sono i lockdown qui a Melbourne, si vive continuamente, si sta a casa praticamente e quindi c'è un po' di tempo per lo studio. So that's the way my program is going to be. I'm going to do a little bit in English and a bit in Italian, and of course the basic of the basis of the work, the reflections are in Italian. So I'll be reading poetry and doing songs, etc. So let's see what happens there. Ok, let's go on. Poi che posato un poco il corpo lasso, ripresi via per la piaggia diserta, sicché il piè fermo sempre era il più basso. Ed ecco quasi al cominciar dell'erta una lonza leggera e presta molto, che di pel macolata era coverta, e non mi si partia dinanzi al volto, anzi mi impediva tanto il mio cammino, che fui per ritornare più volte volto. Tempera dal principio del mattino e il sol montava in su con quelle stelle che eran con lui quando l'amor divino mosse di prima quelle cose belle. Sicché a ben sperar m'era cagione di quella fiera è la gaetta pelle, l'ora del tempo e la dolce stagione. Ma non sì che paura non mi desse la vista che mi apparve d'un leone. Qui Dante actually meets, he wants to go to paradise the short way. He gets into sort of from the very dark place, he goes up, he wants to go up to the mountain, which will lead him to paradise. But he's not allowed, otherwise, what sort of a poem he's going to write? Well, there are three beasts that will stop him on the way. The first one was like a hyena, and the second one is the lion, and the third one is a she-wolf. Well, these animals actually represent represent the institutions in a way, the institutions of the times, you know, the local political situation in Florence, and then you have the French emperor king who wanted to have a piece of Italy because Italy had been divided since Roman times, since the fall of the Roman Empire, and then the church. The church had become very strong by 1300. It really was powerful, very powerful in Europe. So these are the three institutions, but they also represent the sins, our sins along the way. So that's where we are at the moment. Now, how am I going to for time? Yes, I'll continue. Questi parea che contro me venisse con la testa alta e con rabbiosa fame, sicché parea che l'aere ne tremesse. Ed una lupa che di tutte brame sembiava carca nella sua magrezza e molte genti fe già viver grame. Questa mi porse tanto di gravezza e con la paura cuscia di sua vista che io perdei la speranza dell'altezza. Quindi qui Dante stops and says, well, I have no hope of going to paradise. What am I going to do now? And let's have a look. E quale quei che volentieri acquista e giugna il tempo che perde lo face, che in tutti i suoi pensieri piange e s'attrista. Tal mi fece la bestia senza pace, che venendomi incontro a poco mi ripigneva là dove il sol tace. Quindi queste tre bestie lo portavano indietro, dove il sole tace, cioè è scuro. Mentre chi rovinava in basso loco, dinanzi agli occhi mi si fu offerto chi per lungo silenzio parea fioco. Quindi si gira. Quando vide costui nel gran diserto, misere di me, gridai a lui, qualche tu sia d'ombra o d'uomo, certo. E qui Dante vede un'ombra. Here Dante sees a shadow, the shadow of well, are you a man or who are you? And he replies, risposami, non uomo già fui, e lì parenti miei furono lombardi, mantuani per patria ambedui. Nacqui sub Giulio, ancor che fossi tardi, e vissi a Roma sotto il buon Augusto, nel tempo degli dei felsi e bugiardi. Poeta fui e cantai di quel giusto figliol d'Anchise che venne di Troia poi che il superbo Lion fu combusto. E questo è l'autore dell'Eneide, cioè è Virgilio, famoso anche mago, ma famoso come scrittore romano, riguardato come una persona molto sapiente, quindi di buon carattere, che non può, poi sappiamo che lui non può andare in paradiso perché è nato prima della venuta di Gesù Cristo in terra. E continua. Lui dice sono di Milano, mantovano, sono della Lombardia, e quindi Mantova. E dice, and he says, listen, you know, let's have a look at what happens here. When I was young, I lived there, but then I went to Rome. And I went to Rome as a young man, but I actually lived after the Julius Caesar died, the Grande Augusto, you know, his nephew became emperor, and therefore he was able to actually continue his studies and his works there in Rome. So he lived in the early part of his life in Lombardia, but then he lived in Rome. So, here we go. Ma tu perché ritorni a tanta noia? Perché non sali lì il delettoso monte che principio e cangion di tutta gioia? And he says, you know, why don't you go up? I mean, you know, what's stopping you? Or se tu quel Virgilio e quella fonte che spandi di parlar sì largo fiume, risposi io lui con vergognosa fronte. O degli altri poeti onore e lume, vagliami il lungo studio e il grande amore che mi ha fatto cercar lo tuo volume. Tu sei lo mio maestro, il mio autore, tu sei solo colui da cui io tolsi lo bello stile che mi ha fatto onore. Vedi la bestia per cui mi volsi, aiutami da lei, famoso saggio, che ella mi fa tremare le vene ai polsi. So he says to Virgilio, listen, I recognize you now, you are Virgilio, and I've read the Aeneid, I know all about you. Why did this beast stop me? Why don't you, you know, what's going on here? And he says, and Virgilio replies, a te convien tenere altro viaggio, rispose, poiché lagrimar mi vide, se vuoi campar desto loco selvaggio, che questa bestia per la qual tu gride, non lascia altrui passare per la sua via, ma tanto lo impedisce che l'uccide. E a natura sì malvaggeria che mai non empie la gramosa voglia, e dopo il pasto ha più fame che pria. Molti sono gli animali a cui s'ammoglia, e più saranno ancora infin che il veltro verrà che la farà morir con doglia. So it says, listen, these are very bad animals, you know, the institution, talking also about the institutions as such, you know, the local politicians, the French emperor, the Pope, but also the sins that, you know, one acquires during one's lifetime. And he says, these are very bad animals. Why? Because they will not allow anyone to go through to paradise if you've committed a sin. If you committed sins, you have to, you know, you have to watch yourself. So he says, questi non ciberà terra né percio, ma sapienza, amore, virtute, e sua nazione sarà tra feltro e feltro. So the only time you'll be able to go to paradise when il feltro, someone, you know, right at the end of life, of our earthly life, when life will be no more, then someone will come from above. God will send someone and say, listen, you will be coming here, but you will not have any sins if you want to come to paradise. So that's what happens. E di quella umile Italia fia salute, per cui morì la Vergine Camilla, e Urielo e Turno e Niso di Ferute. Questi la caccerà per ogni villa, finché l'altra rimessa nello inferno la onde invidia prima di partirla. Ond'io per lo tuo me penso e discerno che tu mi segui e io sarò tua guida e trarrotti di qui per luogo eterno. Ove udirai le disperate strida, vedrai gli antichi spiriti dolenti che la seconda morte ciascun grida, e vedrai coloro che sono contenti nel fuoco perché sperano di venire quando che sia alle beate genti, alle quali poi se tu vorrai salire, anima fia e ciò più di me degna, con lei ti lascerò nel mio partire. So he says, listen, come with me now and I will take you there to paradise, and then we will travel up to purgatory, and then there I can't come anymore, but there will be someone else who will take you then to paradise, and that will be Beatrice, his Dante's first love, and also a saint according to Dante. Che quello imperador che là surregna per chi fu ribellante alla sua legge, non vuol che in sua città per me si regni. You can't go to God's house unless you have been cleared of all your sins. In tutte parti impera e qui vi regge, qui vi è la sua città e l'alto seggio, o felice colui che vi elegge. So, if you get there, you're going to be a very happy person for the rest of your eternal life. E io a lui poeta, io ti richeggio per quello Dio che tu non conoscesti, Virgilio di not know, Gesù Cristo. Acciò che io fugga questo male e peggio, che tu mi meni là dove or dicesti, sicch'io veggia la porta di San Pietro e color cui tu fai cotanto mesti. So says, I accept your coming with you until the entrance to paradise, the gates with St. Peter, the first pope, the one after Jesus Christ, and the one who went to Rome and he got killed as well, and decided that he would not be crucified like Christ, but he would have the crucifixion upside down. And that's St. Peter, the first pope. And so he says, and so Dante says, allor si mosse e io li tenni dietro. So Virgilio began the trip through taking Dante with him, through the Inferno and through Purgatory. Now, that's the first canto. That's one. And then there are 33 others for Canto 1, when the journey goes through the Inferno, and then there are 33 where you Purgatorio, you purge your sins. So in other words, there'll be ways and means of slowly getting there to purification, if you like, and then you will get in front of Virgilio will have to stop in front of the gates of paradise. So that's Canto 1, and I've never done the whole lot, the whole canto in one reading. I've generally done it in 4 parts on radio, but tonight is very special. It's my night, my first night, and I've dedicated this to Dante Alighieri. So let me see now if I can entertain you with something that I am doing. I'm trying to, let me see. There's a little, here we go. There is someone who wants to talk. What have I done here? Wait a minute. Oh, Jesus. There we are.
Dora, ho tanto desiderio questa sera di scrivere una lettera a qualcuno e fra gli amici della primavera al mio caro amico scriverò. carissimo Pinocchio, amico dei giorni di tutti i miei segreti che confidavo a te. Carissimo Pinocchio, ricordi quando ero bambino, nel bianco mio lettino, ti sfogliai, parlai, sognai. Dove sei, ti dovrei vedere, del tuo mondo vorrei sapere, forse vado che con te. Dove il gatto che ti ingannò, il buon grillo che ti parlò, e la fata continua con te. Carissimo Pinocchio, amico dei giorni i miei segreti resta ancora la mia donna umana.
Well, here we are again. So I did the Dante. Now we're going to go to another poet, but he's very much a poet of our time. And it's the book, Amica Poesia by TomPadula. And I'm going to read what Professor McCormick, my professor at Melbourne University, wrote about me as an introduction to my poems, because I gave him some of my poems at the time, and he read them, and I asked him to write something, and he came up with this. I thought it was quite good. And it's an introduction by Professor Colin McCormick, professor of Italian, University of Melbourne, in the 1960s and the 1970s. And he says, Caro Tom Poeta, per anni ti ho corretto i compiti, dandoti voti or alti o bassi. Adesso mi presenti un compito poetico e non so più che voto darti. Ma non ho più voglia di fare il maestro e i voti li butto fuori dalla finestra. Voglio ascoltare la tua voce e rallegrarmi perché ci sono ancora al mondo persone come te che sentono che questa vita ci può essere cara nella gioia e nel dolore. Quando beviamo ti piacciono le parole tronche con una festosa brigata di amici, o quando stiamo soli davanti alla tomba di un altro amico che non c'è più. Tu sei come il tuo gatto che cammina a testa alta e non ha paura della tempesta. Sei, come dici, un felino filosofo e guardi le stelle. Quanto ti piacciono le stelle. Senti in esse come leopardi il mistero, ma tu ci trovi quello che lui non poté trovare, il calore della vita. Ti piacciono anche i pesci e per i pesci sei stato capace di inventare un verso che non si dimentica, in vitrea vasca di superficial natura. Cosa vuol dire non lo so bene, ma ha una sua musica che mi incanta. Poi dici dopo che in quella vitrea vasca guizzava un pesce di mezz'età. Chi legge quelle parole ti vuol bene, perché hai creato un personaggio, un pesce di 40 anni pieno di buonsenso borghese. Caro Tom Poeta, mi avevi chiesto una prefazione e forse, chissà, un po' di critica solenne, e ti ho dato soltanto dei versi senza capo né coda, e che non sono nemmeno versi. Non volermene, caro Tom Poeta, se scherzo un po', è perché a leggere le tue poesie uno ha voglia di star bene, di accettare le cose, di vivere un po', se questo che hai donato è tanto. So anyone who's read my poetry, and there have been quite a few people, not many, I still have copies of this, and I also, these books are also translated into English as well. So for our, for people who are reading, who want to learn Italian, it's never too late. Even when you are even when you are an adult, because learning a language is never too late. After all, languages, if you have learned one, you can learn another one very easily. Introduction by Professor Colin McCormick. Dear Tom Poet, for years I've corrected your work, given you sometimes high or low marks. Now you present me with a poetical exercise, and I no longer know what marks to give you. But I don't feel like being a teacher anymore, and the marks, I throw them out of the window. I want to listen to your voice and be joyous, because there are still in the world people like you that feel that this our life can be dear to us in joy and in grief. When we drink, you like truncated words, with a festive band of friends, or when we are alone in front of a tomb, or a friend who is no more. You are like your cat who walks head high and is not afraid of the storm. You are like, you say, a philosophical cat, and you look at the stars how you like the stars. You feel in them like Leopardi, the mystery, but you find in them what you could never find, the warmth of life. You also like fish, and for the fish you have been capable of inventing a verse that cannot be forgotten. In vitria vasca, in a vitreous bowl of superficial nature. In a vitreous bowl of a superficial nature. What it means I don't understand well, but it has a music all of its own that enchants me. Then you say that in that vitreous bowl swam a middle-aged fish. Whoever reads those words likes you because you have created a character, a 40-year-old fish full of good bourgeois sense. Dear Tom Poet, you have asked me for a preface and perhaps, who knows, a little solemn criticism. And I have given you only some verses without rhyme or reason, and which are not even verses. Don't hold this against me, dear Tom Poet. If I am joking a little, it is because in reading your poems, a person feels like being healthy, to accept things, to live a little. If this is what you have given, it is a lot. So I read them both in Italian and English because I feel that, if we live in Melbourne, as I do, and we are in an English-speaking country, you need to know the country where you reside, and you also need to keep the language of your ancestors, of your parents, relatives. It enriches the world doing this, and it's something that I, as a parent, cannot pass on to my children in a will. They have to make the effort themselves. And I'm glad that, well, the job has been partially done. But it's never too late for anyone, including you. And on that note, I'm going to try to do another one for you. And this time, let me see if I can find what I was looking for. Yes, here it is. There we are. Enjoy.
A beautiful song. Canta Pierrot. Dove te vai Pierrot? Parli del mesto così, senza un sorriso giocondo, sempre l'amico per mondo. Che vuoi strare dalla vita qua giù, quando c'è gente che non ama più. Prendi la fila chitarra, ritorna a cantare, non lacrimar. Canta per voi, la più stolta canzone del cuore. Canta perché, se tu piangi si vogliono di te. Non sono stilato, non ricordo del tempo che fa. Devi nella vita recitare la farsa anche tu. Guardo in lei la gioventù, come saltello Gigi, bravo soltanto il piacere, l'attimo solo il godere. Adesso di un ritmo fatale di jazz band, ballando tango foxtrot se ne sta, chiedendo un ballo la vita, un ballo l'amor, uccide il cor. Canta Pierrot, la più storta canzone del cuore, canta perché se tu canti si burlano di te, non sospirare, il ricordo del tempo che tu devi nella vita recitare la farsa anche tu.
Well, I hope that you've enjoyed that one. Canto Pierrot. Pierrot, of course, is one of the a French clown, and it's wonderful to, to sing about him as well. Isn't it wonderful? And it's a song that you can actually sing yourselves. And I'm going to present many of these songs to you. But before I do anything else, I think we need a bit of a break, don't you think? Yeah, maybe. So I'll give you something else to enjoy. And this time will be something that I think a lovely song would be in order here. There we are. Well, I thought just a little bit of a break here, but I just want to continue with with presenting myself to the general public too, because not many people know Tom Padula, that's for sure. And Facebook is really quite an incredible platform, and I thought, thanks to Stephen Ross Ferraro, because, and hello Stephen, thank you very much for helping me out with this. And Dominic Petrasso, hi. I know that you listen to Stephen when he has his shows on. And we've got a couple of shows with Stephen, and it's been really wonderful knowing him. Now, I continue with this, my introduction of me by what other people have written about me. Andrea Tossi was the director of the Italian Cultural Institute from 1976 to 1980, and I was a curriculum consultant with the Education Department. I worked closely with him, and again, I gave him my poetry because I began writing poetry in the Value Library of Melbourne University when I was there. And of course, after a while, I printed them I gave some to La Piazza magazine with the Melbourne University Students Italian Club. And, slowly, like anybody with a passion, you sort of tend to keep your passion with you for the rest of your life. Now, this is what Andrea Tossi wrote about me then. I have known Tom Padula for a few years, and I believe not to err in describing him as a natural optimist, a lover of life, of creatures and all things, a Franciscan soul, to sum it up, ready to hear the recall of everything that is beautiful and good with candour and without any intellectual doubt. What Tom Padula feels, he intends to transfer it in his poetry, because it is easier for him to express himself in verse than in prose, since fantasy and the heart take precedence in him above all else. So from his pen, an avalanche of verses have come out, completed in the compositions that now appear in this book. It's only a selection, Tom Padula tells me. He has many others that he has put aside. Writing verses for him is a necessity. It's a relief from his exuberant need to communicate to others his affections, his meditations, his impressions. But are they poetry, these verses? It's not up to me to say so. I don't want to be critical in this brief introduction. Certainly Tom Padula knows well that it's not enough to put words in rhyme, put them in a predetermined succession or placement to achieve poetry. If this were the case, very many who today write would be poets, whereas there are so few who merit to be called by this name. Tom Padula knows that poetry is first of all in the stirrings of the soul and fantasy, in the uniqueness of emotions and images. Poetry's absoluteness of expression and wisdom of style. It's also words chosen, meditated, evocative, and finally it is rhythm, proportion, harmony. Not always are these elements fused together in his compositions to give the full poetical result, but since the growth of an artist does not stop, Padula will certainly arrive to such a result in the fullness of time. The material is there. I had the impression that Tom arrives at his poetry sometimes in one go, with simplicity. Sometimes he extracts it with difficulty, at other times he misses it. But especially in the brief compositions, there's often a freshness of inspiration translated in happy writing. And so it is for me, this happens immediately in the opening of this book. The day is festive at the break of dawn. In To Live, the poetry emerges from a slow meditation. To live your life as you want is nothing more than a mirage in the desert. People place upon you a hope which you ignore. The sparkle of life is perhaps missing from your heart. There are many examples like this one in this selection. I have liked many immediately as I read them for the first time, and in them Padula reveals himself to be a poet. Now, this was written 1979-80. It was a long time ago. Now, Andrea Tossi passed away this year at the age of 95. He also was a great literary figure, and one that left a huge impression here in Melbourne, because it was him who backed up my suggestions to have the workshops here in Melbourne and Congress in Canberra. That resulted in workshops in Sydney, Melbourne, Adelaide and Perth in January 1998, and a Congress in Canberra. And there we worked with Marie de Benedette in Tasmania in 1979 and 1980. Things happened. And then when I returned to work as a consultant, so I had a job as a well, you know, it wasn't a fixed job. I was a teacher, so I had to go back to school, and I did. And the rest is history, as they say. Now, that was you know, just as an introduction to me, and I think you deserve to have another bit of entertainment here. Let me see if I can find it. Where is it now? Sometimes you're looking for things that you've seen before. Here we go. This one here is...
Divina è una rosa.
Stephen, this is for you.
non voglio diventare sempre ai, 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 io gioio d'amore mi dai, io stimo la rosa. Ai, 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 parlare di notte con te è pericoloso. Questa canzone è la storia di una mamma che come noi che si lasciano solo così voglia di te mi questa sia la tua volta vuoi che devi subire non dormire per notte con te.
Wow. Look, singing is one of the pleasures of life. And I have to say this. When I was in Italy, quando ero a Montemurro e poi anche a Moliterno, specialmente a Moliterno, andando dalla piazza su al castello, c'erano 100 e più scalini. E io cantavo La vita è bella e me la voglio godere. Però quando sono arrivato a Melbourne, se mi mettevo a cantare per la strada qui, pensavano che io ero matto. Quindi la realtà è che il cantare fa bene a noi e cerco di incoraggiare adesso anche che tutti cantano, anche che uno sbaglia, perché il cantare non è soltanto dei professionisti, è anche per la gente in generale. Adesso con il fatto di questa pandemia globale, dove cioè, c'è un problema veramente, però è un problema che poi deve essere, si può risolvere, non lo so, perché le malattie quando vengono sono individuali, a volte quelli che stanno bene non credono a quelli che stanno male. Il problema di tutti noi è che quando nella vita ce la dobbiamo godere la vita perché è limitata nel tempo e quello è il problema, perché veniamo e ce ne dobbiamo andare. Questo è un intervallo dell'eternità. Va bene, adesso andando da lì c'è qualcos'altro che a me è sempre piaciuto, il teatro, e specialmente per l'insegnamento dell'italiano. I've always enjoyed, in the teaching of Italian, I always believed that theatre, especially for adults, learning Italian, or even children, but adults especially, because they got more concentration on when learning. I've taught children and adults, and adults are different. It's a different ball game, but at the end of the day, I've had adults learning Italian who then became teachers. They went overseas to perfect their learning. There was a real passion, only a few, but the point was made that you can learn another language as an adult. It's a myth that people say, I can't learn it. No, you can learn anything. You can learn any language if you have to. One of the ways of doing it is this way here. Commedia per principianti. In other words, reading as a character. Here I've got the first one, it's called Dal Dottore. There are three characters, la signora, il bambino, and il dottore. Ok, e comincia perché la signora comincia, buongiorno, il dottore dice, buongiorno signora, come sta? La signora, io sto bene, il bambino sta male. Il dottore, ciao piccolo, buongiorno, come stai? Sto molto male. Che cosa ti fa male? La testa, il naso e lo stomaco. Sarà l'influenza? Sì. Quanti anni hai? Ho 12 anni. Vai a scuola? Sì, vado a scuola. E dov'è la scuola? È in città. E com'è la scuola? La scuola è terribile. Ma che bambino cattivo! Non è vero che non ti piace? Sì, invece è vero. E invece no. Il bambino, sì, ti dico. The doctor intervenes at this point to avoid an argument. Il dottore, vieni qua ed apri la bocca. Il bambino apre la bocca. La gola non è rossa. Vediamo gli orecchi. Gli orecchi sono neri. La signora dice, sono sporchi. Il dottore, vediamo gli occhi. Looks into his eyes. Sono occhi furbi. Tu stai benissimo. Il bambino, no, io sto male. Il dottore, non è vero, ritorna a scuola. Il bambino, no, a scuola no. La signora, grabbing his son, piccola scimmia, a scuola ti ci porto io. Il bambino, il dottore è sciocco. Cosa? A casa facciamo i compiti. A casa facciamo i conti. Well, that's it. You need 3 characters. I've only got me tonight, so that's the way it is. But you know, we're doing pretty well, really, here. So that's Commedia per principianti. There are in here, I think, 12 of them, 4 by 3, 12 sketches, and they're quite entertaining. Now, I have these, you know, I have to speak about Insegna booksellers, because in all my life, Insegna came about because in the mid-70s, there were, you know, in 1974, there were only 14 schools in high schools in the state that taught Italian. Only so many, 14 schools. And then by 1980, we got to 80 schools in my period as a consultant. There was a lot of work done, but also the times, not me, the times. The Italian migrants here in Melbourne were young. They had built material, you know, they had their houses, they had businesses. They, you know, a lot of them spoke English as well, but a lot of them didn't. The children of Italian migrants here by, well, I got to university in 1968, but only very few people there then. But in the next few years, we actually had quite a group, about 50 people. But then in the 70s, it sort of, and now, you know, there are a lot of graduates from the university. Most of the people of second and third generation migrants are professionals. They're doctors, lawyers, accountants, teachers. They're in politics. You find them in business, everywhere. Melbourne has changed a lot, and it's grown beyond belief, and it still keeps going. I mean, it is one of the premier cities in the world. But now with these lockdowns, etc., well, you know, it's a cycle. We have to believe that the future is ours, regardless of what happens. There have been wars, you go over them. There's sicknesses, you get over them. It's a question of keeping the faith in the joy in your heart. And I think I've begun to do this because I too have lost, you know, my partner, my wife, 5 years ago, almost now in October, and life has moved on. I still keep going, still am doing exactly, and if not more, what I was doing before, except I had to do a lot of the work that Nella was doing, and you know, I started going to the Italian clubs, and then what happens? The Italian clubs stop their activities. In other words, you know, I'm always getting there too late for some reason, but I'm sure that things will come back bigger and better. And the lockdown, if nothing else, has the positives of it is that a lot of the population there is using online technology for our own daily uses, including business. And I have put on, in this time, I've put on about 3,500 books on insegna.com. Anyone is interested, just have a look at it. I also have a lot of work on YouTube, TomPadulaTV on YouTube. There's the blog spot, tompadulapoetry.blogspot.com or TomPadula. There's a lot of my work is there because I've believed in technology for a very long time, since really the late 70s, early 80s. I met someone at Hedfield High School in 1980 who was absolutely a brilliant guy. It's unbelievable. And that's when the computers began to arrive in schools. And I attempted it, but by that time I had 3 children, and I thought, nah, this is a waste of time, you know. I can just get someone else to do the job. Well, the reality is you can't. You have to learn it yourself. Like everything else, when you do it yourself, you limit yourself, but at the same time, when you're on your own, you depend on yourself for living. And even as a questa età abbiamo bisogno di essere positivi nella vita, di continuare sempre a pensare ad un futuro che anche se non c'è poi lo lasciamo indietro, si lascia tutto indietro alla fine. Però nel frattempo post mortem quid valere, dopo la morte che cosa vale la vita? Ante mortem valere, prima della morte vale la vita, non dopo, ma anche dopo, nel ricordo, quindi queste cose qui vengono lasciate nel ricordo. E quanti ricordi ci sono su Facebook, su YouTube, su Twitter, su quello e quell'altro. Quindi non fa niente quanti anni avete, quanti anni abbiamo tanto da imparare ancora, specialmente nella tecnologia. Spero che questa sera questo che sto facendo è di vostro gradimento. Se voi volete mi potete anche scrivere un'email a TomPadulaTV@gmail.com. Quindi se volete anche suggerirmi, se vi è piaciuto per esempio la lettura dell'Inferno, le mie poesie, se volete, più sketches, ma io ho tantissimo da dare, quindi da coprire in questa ora settimanale che io farò per voi, per me, ma lo faccio più per me che, vi confesso, lo faccio tanto per me che per voi. È come le poesie, io le scrivo non solo per me, le scrivo anche per chi eventualmente le leggerà, se le leggono. Se non le leggono, stanno nel cassetto. Però non sta mai niente nel cassetto mio, perché cerco sempre di coinvolgere altri a seguire quello che faccio. E non facciamo così tutti con le nostre cose, uno che fa il giardino, uno che cucina. Abbiamo tutti bisogno di una mano, uno dell'altro. Cooperation, non competizione, ma anche la competizione va anche bene perché ti porta a fare molto di più. Adesso sono le 8:23, non avevo scelto, però credo un'altra canzone ci vorrebbe veramente, un po' di musica qua. Vediamo un po' quello che ho. Continuiamo questa qui, continuiamo con questa. Vediamo un po'.
Il cuore mio non dorme mai, per beccarti accanto a me. Aspettando il cuore più, è un ragazzo solo è entrato di periferia, ti ha visto tante volte via, e tra un tempo che non sa dove la mia felicità, impazzisco senza te. E ogni notte ti
Well, I hope you enjoyed that. Thank you very much to Paolo Pergolese and also to Sistina. That was an evening at the Federazione Lucana in Brunswick. You can see people dancing there. It was a few months ago when it was possible to dance in the Italian clubs of Melbourne, because the Italian clubs of Melbourne are very, very many, and people want to go to the activities. They also, thank you to, well, Il Globo has got the weekly, every week, twice a week, we've got the Italian paper, which is also in English online. But, the Italian community in Melbourne is pretty well organised. And can I say, just leave this as a reflection. The teaching of Italian in Australia, they tell me, from good sources, I don't have the figures in front of me, but they said about 370,000 students of Italian in Australia learning Italian. I mean, it's just like an hour a week, 2 hours a week maximum. So, but the reality is that we've made a very big effort in Australia to teach the language and to keep in touch with Italian culture. And here we also have cultures of so many other countries, and respect to each and every one of them. And in fact, Insegna has been backing up. I've got 20 languages on my website, and we've had this all along from the early 80s, basically the late 70s, because really Insegna really began in 76, but 1980 was the year that really took off. On that note, I think I'm getting there now to the finish of this particular 1 hour TomPadulaTV show live on Facebook. I think that's a good one. TomPadulaTV live on Facebook once a week from 7:30 till 8:30. And can I say this? I will start at 7:25 with some music so that you can switch on, and then I will start exactly at 7:30 the program. And now I hope that I'll be able to finish off and record it. And here it says, bring them on camera. In other words, the people who've been listening here, I'm sorry, but I don't know. I've tried to bring you on my, thank you to Stephen, to Joe Caputo, also Maria Jose Angelami, that's my niece, Angelami Costanzo. Antonio Rubera is watching. Antonio Rubera, thank you. Tony Angelino, Gian Maria Liuzzi from Montemurro. Isn't that wonderful? It's fantastic. And Maria Nuccio Formica is watching as well. Dominic Petrasso, Angela Imola, Angela's birthday today. Auguri. Okay, on that note, I think I'll finish right on that note. Thank you for watching TomPadulaTV live on Facebook. Ciao, alla prossima settimana. Ciao ciao.